Hello class, I'm going to help you with do now number 4, which has to do with our blending options. First you need to retrieve the background, which you'll find on my website, paulpellic.com. You'll also need to have this door, which you can also retrieve from my website. Then you're going to need to hunt for two other things. Here you can hunt for a nice little statue, and you can also hunt for a brick doorway, where you can Google brick archway and you can see what you get from there. So what we're going to do first is we're going to work on the archway and the doorway. So first thing, let's see if we can bring in that door that we first started with. So I'm going to bring up the door. And one of the things we can do is, as you know, there's a bunch of different ways to select. I'm going to actually use the magic wand tool. So if I use the magic wand here on the white, well, if you notice, it actually selects the entire background, but not the door. If I want to just select the door, we can invert the selection. It's quite easy to do. If you go to select and you go down to inverse, what that's actually going to do is if you click on it, it switches. Instead of now having the background selected using the magic wand, I now just have the door. Well, to use that in our photo, we can now click on the move command, click on this image, and drag it now onto our new canvas. And as you can see here, we've now imported our door. And that wasn't too difficult. If you missed it, I'm going to show you again with the archway. Now we don't need this door anymore, so I'm just going to minimize it. Bringing up the archway is going to be the same type of idea. If you notice, here it is. Well, we want to select the archway. We don't want to select this white background. You go to your magic wand tool, which is over here. Click on the white background, and if you notice, it selects the entire white background. If you notice, you'll see the background here selected, the archway selected. So we want to actually just get the archway. Very easy to do. We go to select, inverse, and you'll notice now that the background is no longer selected, just the archway is. Click on the move command, slide it on over, let go, and you'll see here we are. Now we have three layers. Now we've got the background, we've got the door, and we've got the archway. Notice that the door is behind the archway. Also noticed here because it's on top of this layer. Well, I want to give the illusion of the door opening. That's real easy to do. Click on the layer with the door. You can verify that by clicking the eyeball here, and you'll see that it's highlighted. We want to give it some perspective. The way to do that is it's really fun. If you go into Edit, you'll notice that in Edit there's a command called Transform. I want you to transform perspective. So once again, Edit, Transform, Perspective. We click on that, and if you notice, it draws a little box around our layer. And if you put your mouse right here and you click on it, watch what happens. I'm going to drag the mouse up. It gives the illusion of the door opening. So that's real neat. That's going to give a real good thing. If you notice right now that my door is a little too big for the frame, so we can adjust that as well. Let's click the checkbox, and to adjust the size, make sure Show Bounding Box is checked. To keep your aspect ratio, hold down the Shift key, click and drag a corner, and you'll see it's going to reduce now, and we'll get a little bit of a nicer size there in relation to the arch that we're working on. I click the checkbox, and you'll see it looks pretty good. Now I'll uncheck the bounding box, and you can see this looks a little bit more realistic. It looks like the door is actually opening up, and it gives it a little bit of a three-dimensional flair. The next thing that I'd like to incorporate is that statue. So here it is, and let's see if we can have a little bit of fun with this. I'm going to use the magnetic lasso tool to make our selection in this case. And because it's a really good contrast between the background and the foreground, the magnetic lasso is doing a really good job of selecting this marble figure. So this is going really well. Every once in a while I'm making a click just to anchor down my point. And just because it's looking really nice, I don't want it to get messed up. So those clicks every once in a while really make a big deal. The magnetic lasso tool is one of those tools where it works under real special circumstance situations. For example, in this one, because there's a real good contrast between the foreground and the background, it works real well because it can really define the difference in the pixels. So I'm almost done. And once it's done, you're going to notice that I will have the nice little dancing lines around it. To import into the picture, I click on the Move command, click on this, slide it on over, and if I let go, you'll see there is the statue. Now, to give a little bit of a fade effect, as you notice on the instructions for the Do Now, there's a little bit of a fade effect. If we double click on this layer, it's going to open up, right click, and my computer's running a little bit slower because I have the screen capture program, but either you can double click or you can right click and open up your blending options. For this particular option, what I want to do is I'm going to slide this down here. I want to change what's called the opacity. What that's going to do is it changes how see-through the image is. Watch. Click it on the slider. If I slide it all the way down, it's 100% transparent. You can't see it. But maybe if we slide it maybe just a little bit, maybe 44, 45%, you'll see I'm actually up to 53 now, and it looks real nice. So I'm going to click OK. So you can see you have a nice little bit of, you can see that statue just a little bit, and that's just using the opacity. Once again, you can either right click and go to blending options, and that'll open up that menu for blending options. Or if you want, you can always just double click on that menu and it will open up the blending options. Either way works. The last thing I want to do is add a little bit of text to my layer. So I'm going to click on I want to make sure I'm on the top layer because I want this to be in front. Click on text and we'll draw a little box here. Alright, the font is a little big, so I'm going to reduce it. You can see a change in here. And I'm just going to type in welcome. And that looks real nice. I might want a different font, so I'm going to highlight that, and as you can see up here, I can change it to a bunch of different things. Let's see if we can find a really nice one. Oh, Rockwell's a nice one. And that looks pretty good. But maybe we can even bold it out a little bit. Yeah, it looks real nice. And change the color. The lime green I don't think is working for this particular scenario. Maybe a good red. That's as red as it's going to get. What I'm also going to do is I'm going to reduce the size of this layer by clicking on one of the corners and doing that. And also I'm going to change the placement of this layer by clicking on the Move command and moving it. Another thing I can do now with this, if I go back to text, I'm going to click on the layer, which is this one, and notice there's a T with a little arc under it. If I click on that, what that will allow me to do is have some style to my text layer. I'm going to arch it. So let's click right there, and if you notice, it's added a little bit of arch. I can slide this here. I can actually change the amount of bend to match my archway, because there's a little bit of bend to it. Maybe a little bit of horizontal distortion. Now we want to keep that a little bit centered, because as you know, and vertical distortion will give you the same thing. Maybe a little bit of it, just to give it that nice flare. Okay, we click OK. We click the checkbox to confirm our selections. Let's do some layer blending for this particular text layer. Once again, you can either double click or right click and then go to blending options. Now it's going to take a moment to open up the menu, but there it is. Let's add a few nice little things. Let's first add some outer glow. If we click on the outer glow, it automatically checks it, and you can see we have some options. We can change the opacity, we could change the spread and the size, and that looks real nice there. We can also, in this case, do what's called stroke. Stroke, as you can tell in this case, because we're doing a red stroke, it's not going to show up too well. I'm going to change the red to maybe a yellow, a good contrasting color. And you can see, depending on the size of the stroke, we can make different changes. And it kind of just really highlights this and makes it look a lot prettier, gives it a little bit of a three-dimensional quality. Well, that's going to do it for our layer. First we just imported our background. Then we imported our door. When we did the door, we did an edit, transform, and we transformed perspective. The next thing we did was we imported our marble statue here, went to layer options, and actually made it different in opacity. And if you also notice, the opacity is reflected up here where it says 53%. And then last I did a text layer, and I added two things to it. I added stroke, which gives it that nice little outline there, and I added outer glow, which kind of glows outside of that particular layer. Thank you so much for paying attention. If you have any more questions, paulpellick.com. Have a wonderful rest of your day.